Okay, happy to introduce to you a lovely presenter. We have here itgrrl, or if you're meeting outside of cyberspace, Jessica. She is a senior cyber unicorn who tries to make technologies less terrible. Her experience spans technical and management domains, including cybersecurity, systems and networks, web development and IT management, and service delivery. In her day job, she is focused on cybersecurity, or risk management with computers, information privacy, and IT policy and governance. In her spare time, she enjoys reading privacy policies and legislation, no, really, tinkering with tech, stargazing, and Star Trek, and Buffy. Musical theatre, and the occasional unexpected journey. If we could have a round of applause welcoming her.
Thank you so much for that lovely introduction. Greetings, programs. I'm here today to talk to you about everything open. In the context of open source software, open hardware, open data, open government, open access, open technologies in general. I'll be asking whether everything should really be open, what that looks like for us as a society, and if that's what we really want. So if that's not what you expected this talk to be about, you're probably in the wrong room. I will not take offence if you scurry away now and find something else to spend your valuable time on. But before we begin, before I start, I'd like to acknowledge that we're meeting here on the in Titania, on the traditional country of the Koana people of the Adelaide Plains, and I offer my respect to elders past and present. And I researched and wrote my talk on the lands of the Ngunnawal, Ngambri, Gunakara, Monero and Bidawal peoples. I recognise and respect their cultural heritage, beliefs and relationship with the land and water. I acknowledge that these are of continuing importance to First Nation people living today. And I extend my respect to any other Aboriginal language groups and other First Nations, particularly those who might be in the room with us today. And I'd like to give a little shout out to the volunteers. I want to sincerely thank all of the volunteers who've donated their time and energy to make everything open happen, including the audiovisual folks up the back there, always up the back. Yes, round of applause, thank you very much. And our room moderator and everyone else who's done check-in and setting up and all of the logistics, it's wonderful. This fantastic gathering would not exist without their efforts. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Before I dive into things in earnest, let me introduce myself and provide some context of the lens through which I look at things and through which I've put together this talk for you today. And there we go. Who am I? This is me. My work title, sadly, it's not what my business card says, Senior Cyber Unicorn. No, I'm just kidding. I work in the public sector in a government agency. We don't have any money for business cards. Never happens. You can find me on Mastodon. If you want to tell me that everything I'm about to say is wrong, although I would appreciate it if you wait at least 15 minutes so I'm not demoralised by all the notification sounds pinging around me. And there's a link here to my very infrequently updated blog, as is aptly indicated by the cobwebs icon. Right, and a quick word on questions and discussion. I've scripted my talk today, which is a way to help me both stay on target and manage anxiety. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them at the end of my talk, and we should have some time for that. I also hope that what I have to share will kick off a discussion, both in and outside the room. I'm keenly aware that there are plenty of people in the room and at this conference who have deep experience and knowledge to share in this area, the things that I'm talking about, and I'd like to start having that discussion with you all. I don't think that I've uncovered any astounding, previously unthought of insights or solutions to how we go about balancing the tensions between openness and privacy, between openness and safety, openness and security, openness and providing viable ways for creators to get paid for their work. So sorry about that. You can also come and find me during the conference or ping me on Mastodon and I'll be happy to continue the conversation there. Okay, so let's get started. First of all, I don't have them yet, but I will have the finalised versions of my slide deck and a cleaned up version of my transcript for today up on my website. So scan that code with your little cameras and click on the link. It's definitely not a Rickroll, can guarantee that, probably. So there we go. Everything open all at once. I think it's probably obvious to most folks that I'm riffing on the recent movie Everything Everywhere All at Once. I hope I've captured the feel of the movie poster on this title slide. No AIs were harmed in the making of this background image. I know, we should torture them, but maybe not just now. Everything Everywhere All at Once, commonly abbreviated to EEAAO, try saying that quickly, stars the amazing Michelle Yeoh as a woman whose ordinary life is abruptly turned upside down and inside out by a whirlwind journey through a fractured multiverse, which, spoiler alert for those who haven't seen it yet, which ultimately allows her to explore the many roads not taken and leads her to a better understanding of herself and her life, her connections to her family and communities, and I think it also allows her to finally exercise some self-compassion. I love this movie for its frenetic energy, its centering of a middle-aged woman of colour in a complex story of family dynamics, expectations, disappointments, and connections, and the way it allows its characters to explore the many roads not travelled in their lives, allowing them to unpack the what-if feelings that they have about the choices they've made and the paths that their own lives have taken. I don't know about you, but that resonates a little bit for me. As I was brainstorming possible talks to submit to this year's call for papers, the title of this movie kept tickling the pattern recognition parts of my brain, from everything open to everything open all at once. And then, of course, my fate was sealed. I just had to put together a talk that explores something I've been thinking about a lot, openness, and all of its facets, while riffing on this cultural phenomenon of a movie. And the more I thought about it, the more I thought about what everything open means in the context of openness, or lack of it, in the various contexts in which we all exist. Our use of and reliance on technology, including software and hardware, in business and our work lives, in government and public policy, including law enforcement and intelligence agencies, but most of all in our personal lives, where the impacts of poorly designed technologies or its use by others to abuse us can be devastating. Everything. And I realise that when we say everything open in the context of this conference, that we're making a statement of what's in scope for the conference, partially in contradistinction to its roots in linuxconfau. We're saying, I think, for me, that this conference is explicitly not just about open source operating system, or open source software, or open hardware, but about openness across a larger set of axes.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Sing it, sister. Yes, open source, but also open data, open government, open access, open technologies. And in that way, I think we're choosing to widen the discussion. We're not actually saying explicitly and specifically and exactly everything in the world should be open, are we? Well, sometimes I think that is what we're saying, and I'd like to explore that, interrogate it, and together with you unpack it a little bit. Okay, everything, this movie is structured in 3 parts. For the movie, it's everything, everywhere, all at once. For this talk, it's everything, open, all at once. Let's see how we go. Everything is made of computers. Cryptographer Bruce Schneier wrote about this in his 2018 book, Click Here to Kill Everybody, Security and Survival in a Hyper-Connected World. Click Here to Kill Everybody. What a fantastic book title. I would have loved to have been his agent. He pointed out that everything is becoming vulnerable because everything is becoming a computer. More specifically, a computer on the internet. He goes on to say that everything is a cyber-physical system. Your oven is a computer that makes things hot. Your refrigerator is a computer that keeps things cold. Your camera is a computer with a lens and a shutter. An ATM is a computer with money inside, if you're lucky. And modern light bulbs are computers that shine brightly when someone or some other computer flips a power switch or, toggles an app, something like that. And it gets worse when you think about cyber-physical systems, many of which we interact with or sit inside regularly. Bruce continues, your car used to be a mechanical device with some computers in it in the relatively recent past. Now it is 20 to 40 computer distributed system with 4 wheels and an engine. For those of you who work with computers on a daily basis, that should terrify you. I know most people are like, oh my God, my computer isn't starting, why or not? Every time a computer boots up, I'm a little bit amazed because of all the things that have to work together to get it to that point. When we understand deeply how that technology works and how it all stacks together, yeah, I'm amazed a computer ever turns on. And worse again, when these systems are already when these already networked constellations of computers are further networked into autonomous swarms of cyber-physical systems, this is the future that autonomous driving vehicles actually entails. Everything is computers all the way down. I'm sad to say that it's not turtles all the way down, it's now computers all the way down. So this is the alternate reality we're living in, sad for us. Everything is about cyber. And that's kind of a me thing, but I think you'll agree with me by the end that it is. As I mentioned, I work in cybersecurity, which we used to call information security, and before that we used to call simply computer security. I like to call it risk management with computers. It's probably not particularly cool for me to be quoting myself on a slide, but here we are. Yeah, well, I've always thought so, but then I have to. Sometimes, especially if you work in government or other large organisations, it's called governance, risk and compliance, or GRC. But computer security and even information security, and especially governance, risk and compliance, are super boring, so no one comes to the meetings. So we came up with cybersecurity, which is much more exciting and, riffing on all of the various origins of the word cyber and cyberspace and all of those kind of things. So this is a significant influence on the lens through which I look at the world of open technologies and open access. More generally, I call myself a public interest technologist, a term I borrowed from that renowned cryptographer, Bruce Schneier, that I quoted just before. I've had a long career in technology. That's a really polite way to say that I am an old, which I'm sure the young folk don't actually say anymore. I've built, hardened and deployed bare metal servers into data centres and plugged them directly into the raw internet. It was a simpler time. I've built, trained and run service desk teams, been an account manager, marketing manager and troubleshooter of final resort, all at the same internet service provider. I've run my own web development business in which I love the technical side but dislike the running a business part, and which, for context, I wrapped up just as CSS was starting to be a thing. To be honest, I feel like I dodged a flaming arrow on that one. How do you even, with CSS, excuse me one moment, hit that cough button, fellas. And for the last decade plus, I've worked mostly in the public sector, first running public school IT environments and then in IT project management, running DevOps build pipelines and eventually landing where I've always been really, cybersecurity. If you weren't actually doing reasonable security or making an attempt when you were putting bare metal servers into Colo to do web hosting in the late 90s, you were doing it wrong. I've done more years of sysadmin and network admin than I can recall. I've seen things you people wouldn't believe. Attack ships on fire, Different speech, different movie. Okay, great. Firstly, because at its heart, that's what it is, but also because technology is made of people. Not in the Soylent Green sense, but technology is made of people. And the people that I work with, the people that I advise, influence, on a good day, educate and support, often have different skill sets than what we've come to call technical people. Bit of a misnomer. But technical people, that's also known as computer touchers. I recognise a few of you in the room today, fellow computer touchers. Computer Touchers Anonymous will be run after this session. Everything is complicated, which I think is true for life and for the way we navigate the world more generally. But in the world of technology, absolutely. Absolutely. It's more complicated than we would like it to be. In cybersecurity, complexity is the enemy of security, which also means that complexity can be the enemy of privacy. This is the world that we as open technologists inhabit. These are the technologies that we create, extend, deploy, support, and use. These are the technologies that other people, our friends and loved ones, and people we will never meet depend on daily to negotiate our increasingly intertwined physical and digital realms. There is no longer online and RIL, that's in real life for the people under, 20. They've all merged, and there's no realistic way, short of societal collapse, which is still very much a possibility. Check your bingo cards, I fear. Well, that's depressing, isn't it? Okay. Open. I love this slide. For those who haven't seen the movie, this is a universe within the multiverse where there's no animal life. Yet Evelyn and her daughter somehow inhabit these rocks with googly eyes, mind you, which I've been provided some, thank you so much, and have some of the most open conversations of their relationship. Go see the movie if you haven't already, it's quite a ride. So what do we mean when we say that something is open? It seems like a pretty simple question, doesn't it? Well, buckle up, folks, because like we've already established, it's complicated. Open source software. Probably the first thing we think of when we talk about things being open in the context of technology is open source software. And there's a growing amount of open hardware being created as well. Open source software and hardware are near and dear to the hearts of many of you in this room. To varying degrees, I think it's fair to say that most of us consider that these kind of open systems and open licensing are fundamental to doing open technology. The Open Source Initiative, the OSI, is a body that approves, or not, software licenses that submit themselves through their license review process so that they can be essentially certified as being open source licenses. The OSI has written a definition of open source called, unsurprisingly, the open source definition. Maybe a little more creativity might have gone into that one. Okay, so there's a lot of stuff there, and I'm not going to read all the details, but basically they include things like free redistribution, source code, derived works, integrity of the author's source code, no discrimination against persons or groups, no discrimination against fields of endeavour, more about this in a second, distribution of licenses must not be specific to a product, licenses must not restrict other software, licenses must be technology neutral. Over the years, a few attempts have to create open source licenses that prohibit specific uses, generally by people who don't want their work, their hard labour, their effort, being used for purposes or by organisations that they are morally opposed to. They haven't gained much traction, and from a legal and licensing point of view, they're generally considered unenforceable. In particular, these licenses tend to come into conflict with items 5 and 6 on that list. If you say, you can use my software, but only if you're not in the military, etc., you come into conflict with those licenses. And, to an extent, the people who are developing these licenses did so with an intention that they would be robust against any kind of modifications that might exclude certain groups. We'll talk a bit more about inclusion and exclusion in a second. like I said, it's complicated. Now, I don't pretend to understand all of the details of the legal implications of OSI approval, but suffice to say that policing of open source license code is something that requires constant attention. There are plenty of organisations, mostly for-profit companies, who are very happy to use the product of all of the combined labour of contributors to open source software, many of you in this room, and open hardware also in this room, without contributing anything back to that effort, which is fine in one sense. You can't really make your work available under an open source license and then complain when people use that work without contributing time, resources and effort back to the community that produced it. It sucks, but it's fair use. But a lot of companies use open source software and open hardware, build on it, sell it, or distribute products and services based on it. Most of the world tech stack in terms of cloud, there is no cloud, someone else's computer, someone else's data center, we all know this, is built on top of the open source technology that we all use. A lot of apps are, a lot of smart devices, all of those sorts of things. You can see generally a list of the licenses. The good companies will show you that stuff. So they fail to meet those obligations imposed on them by the use of the technology covered by that license. At the most basic level, open source software licenses require as a condition of use that you contribute any improvements, and I'm generalising wildly here, any improvements that you make back to the work, back to the open projects that produced it, include the license information with the product you sell or distribute, and make the source code or schematics or documentation available to the people and organisations that you distribute your product or service to. Some companies fail to meet the bare minimum of a not very onerous requirement. Now, not all open source licenses do require that software be distributed free of charge. More about that in a second. And free software, the term is usually explained as free as in speech, not as in beer. And this is acknowledged to be an imperfect analogy. It's not concerned with the distribution at no cost, as some open source licenses require. So speaking of free software, it's just another name for open source software, right? Yeah, no, that's definitely bait. The Free Software Foundation is focused more on the rights or freedoms enabled for the user rather than being made available at no charge. And look, I know many of us in this room are very familiar. I'm not treading any particularly new ground here. So they're more focused on user rights than free as in beer, as they say, rights. The four essential freedoms, open source and free software, are listed there. So you can see, and of course they start from zero. Interestingly, not because they were nerdy programmers who start everything from zero, but apparently the original version of this started from 1, 2, and 3, and then they went, oh, hang on, there's a fourth freedom that's actually more foundational, so we'll slot it in at 0. Good job. And now we just think they're all nerdy programmers. So these define what is and what isn't free software. And you can see there that a program is free software only if the program's users have these 4 essential freedoms. Freedom to run the program as you wish for any purpose, etc., etc. You can read the slides and download them later, if that's not a rickroll. There are differences between the approach and focus of the open source movement and the free software movement. They have a different but overlapping, I think, philosophical emphasis and somewhat different drivers. But both groups agree that in practice, most open source licenses are compatible with free software licenses and vice versa. Okay. Open information. There's a famous quote from Stuart Brand that many of you will immediately recognise and perhaps champion. Information wants to be free. Often said stridently or excitedly, the implied exclamation point is made audible. But how many of you know the full quote from which this aphorism has been excised, even in some books that actually purport to copy it down verbatim? The original full quote is there. And this is Stuart Brand actually replying to Woz, now you might be familiar with that name, Steve Wozniak, who made an impassioned plea that, or an impassioned statement, I guess, that how it's wrong for companies to prevent others from using innovations that they may have created but have no plans to bring to market. He saw that as wrong. And I think they're wrong in the moral sense rather than in a commercial sense. The discussion happened at the Hackers Conference, the original one in 1984, which was an invitation-only conference in the San Francisco Bay Area. No shocks there. That has been run every year since that first event. There's actually video of the event, but of course it's only available under a commercial license and heavily watermarked, of course. So I'm not going to play it here. I couldn't afford the licensing fee that Getty Images wanted for me to play it for you. That's a lot for a single conference presentation, I thought. Certainly more than I've spent on the entire thing so far, except maybe the laptop. However, you are perfectly welcome to go to their website and view it at your leisure on their website as part of determining, of course, whether you'd like to license it for your own use. This link is in a handy-dandy QR code. So again, photos, go have a look. It's an interesting little video, very short. Unless this one's a Rickroll. But it's probably not. Probably. So the phrase information wants to be free has become a bit of a catch cry for different groups. Oh, and I should say, if you look at this thing here, the point is that it was actually a bit of a free-flowing discussion. It wasn't a little soundbite. So they're actually talking about the pros and cons, that in some contexts information wants to be expensive because it has value and it has cost to produce. On the other hand, information almost wants to be free because the cost is reducing and all of that stuff, and net marginal cost of production, all those kind of things. So it's become a bit of a catch-cry for different groups to rally people to their cause, often to argue on ideological grounds. There's that Rickroll QR code again. That intangible digital goods where additional copies can be reproduced at approximately zero marginal cost should be widely available for free or nearly free. This includes people who engaged in copyright infringement, note the term, of digital goods, or goods that could be converted to perfect digital copies, digital versions, such as music or compact discs, or sold as in licensed, though not sold like a physical object, as digital content or ebooks, things like that. The response of digital content rights holders, not creators, distributors, rights holders, to copyright infringement was very swift and aggressive, with record companies initially leading the charge. They pursued not just the people who ripped the original media to create digital copies, and not just people who might have been selling them for profit, and that frequently involved finding ways to remove copy protection schemes, even in the early days. They also took vigorous legal action against those who downloaded the files. They argued for the highest possible interpretation of the financial losses of this downloading caused their businesses, usually asserting that every downloaded song, album or movie represented a loss of the full retail price of every item downloaded, every song, every album, whatever, whether you would have ever bought it or not, whether you listened to it or not, whether you shared it with other people or not, whether you sold it or not. And they also added enormous punitive compensation claims on top of that. They called it piracy. That's very evocative, right? And they waged media campaigns trying to position copyright infringement of digital works as equivalent to and as bad as theft of extremely expensive physical objects like cars. In 2004, the Motion Picture Association of America, they tend to leave that bit out, of America, produced a 45-second trailer that was screened in cinemas before movies to chastise you and tell you not to do the bad thing, and was also added at the start of DVD discs, movie discs, if anyone hasn't seen them, as an unskippable pre-movie part of your experience. I need air quotes, I think, for that. As you might expect, the parodies were swift and merciless. Noting that this is a kind of a PG-13 audience, I'm bleeping all the potentially bad swear word thingies. So, Cory Doctorow, who is an activist, journalist and science fiction author that you may be familiar with, is a staunch supporter of all things privacy and digital rights, and a long-time supporter and member of the Electronic Frontier Foundation, but is not a fan of this slogan, information wants to be free. In his 2014 book, Information Doesn't Want to Be Free, He writes, "It's time to kill it. The desires of information are totally irrelevant to the destiny of the internet, the creative industries, or equitable society. Information is an abstraction and it doesn't want anything." Kind of obvious and self-evident. Information doesn't want to be free. People do. That's what he cares about. Technology is made of people. So the copyright wars. Over the last 30 plus years, there's been a war raging. It's all very militarised, all this stuff. It's worse in cybersecurity. Gosh, they love their military analogies. Okay, that's hyperbole, and I'm not a fan of the militaristic analogies, but some people have dubbed the erosion of people's rights in the migration from physical to digital content as the copyright wars. DRM, digital rights management, you may have heard of, the ability of content rights holders to use laws designed for software to restrict what you can do with the things you acquire a non-transferable license to use, not buy, is termed digital rights management or DRM. This combination facilitated by technology and laws allows companies to restrict a thing that is inherently infinitely reproducible to allow them to resell it an infinite number of times, no matter how little it actually costs to produce it, as if it were a limited, scarce commodity. In 1998, the US passed the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, better known as the DMCA. I can never remember which way the letters go, but DMCA. Section 1201 of this law effectively criminalised attempting to circumvent any access controls built into digital works. While the original intent of the law may, emphasis on the may, have been to protect authors of digital works from copyright principle, we can't really assess people's intentions. In practice, say it with me, folks, Posywid. If anyone was in Daedalus' talk yesterday, Justin, probably in the room somewhere, had everyone chanting along with this here. I feel like we need a drinking game for every time we trot out Posywid. The purpose of a system is what it does. I'm going to try and speed things up because I think I'm behind time here. In 2001, when cybernetician Stafford Beer, we'd probably call him a cyberneticist today, gave an address at the University of Valladolid in Spain, he used the phrase, "the purpose of a system is what it does." This was captured in his 2002 article, "What is Cybernetics?" which is what I'm citing there. And a shout out to Daedalus, Justin Warren, for introducing me to this concept via his numerous social media posts over the years, and of course his wonderful stickers that you can buy online. And these stickers are real, physical objects that you can get to own for real. How quaint. In Australia, Section 116 of the Copyright Act 1968, Commonwealth, has similar provisions against circumvention of access control technological protection measures. Just here you go. This is Justin yesterday in front of his slide there with his T-shirt, all very merchandisable, very marketing, much wow. And this is a close-up of that sticker, which you can. He's got links in his social media, possibly on his slide deck, that you can go buy them. They're fun. I love them. Great. So, just 1 second. Right, so the laws around intellectual property, software patents, copyright continue to evolve, but often at a frustratingly slow pace, and not always in the direction that we'd perhaps like to see. In October last year, a final rule granting exemptions to Section 1201 was adopted by the US Library of Congress, but even that was a bit of a mixed bag. So it's, 1 step forward, 3 steps backwards, 2 steps sideways, another step forward. Here we go. There are fundamental differences between the physical products that we're used to buying, or we have been used to buying and owning, and the various digital products that we buy, software, music, movies, ebooks, enabled by it being computers all the way down. And a raft of intellectual property laws, software patents, expansions of copyright terms for copyright owners. We live in a world where many of the things that we used to buy and actually own, wow, boy am I behind. Thank you. With all the rights that come along with that, are effectively leased to us via a non-transferable license. You can't resell it, you can't pass it on to your kids when you die, and often you can't even loan it to a friend when you're not even using it. So you can see why this idea gained traction. Sure, some people use it as justification to download all the things just because they can, and some even resell what they copy and make money from it. But there are a raft of asymmetries between companies and customers, companies and creators, and even some large companies and governments. Hit that cough button again, thanks. Sorry, folks, gotta love those seasonal allergies. Now, some people say if buying isn't owning, then pirating isn't stealing. Couldn't find an original source for that. Boy, did I look. It's kind of trite. It's often used as a justification for people doing what they wanted to do anyway. But there is a kernel of truth in there, I think, there. So, right to repair. The right to repair movement's been around since at least 2016. I'm sure it's been longer, but that's the first reference I could find. And they've been fighting this battle for a long time against vested interests, particularly the companies that would quite like to have no choice than to pay them to repair their products when they break down. And when I say their products, that's kind of what I mean, in the sense that a lot of the manufacturers of what were previously physical-only goods have been looking at what's going on in the software industry and going, we want to get some of that, so let's do that. Turns all they had to do was sprinkle some software through their products, that software being pretty much anything that qualified as an access control measure to accomplish their ends. Another concept here is if you can't open it, you don't own it. This is the Maker's Bill of Rights that was actually put out by Make magazine. I think we're probably mostly familiar with that as well. This was in 2005 by a maker known as Mr. Jalopy, a well-known person in the maker space there. And that's where the slogan comes from. The Bill of Rights includes things like you can see there, meaningful and specific parts shall be included, circuit boards shall be commented, amusingly, screws better than glues. It rhymes, so it must be true. And also mandates things like docs and drivers must be uploaded to the Internet Archive for all perpetuity. Interestingly, while there are a bunch of old back issues of Make magazine available on the Internet Archive, they are not available to download via any means. You have to borrow them on a very time-limited basis, but you can go to their website and buy all of the things there. So the right to repair laws is a bit of a mishmash of jurisdictions, both globally and within individual countries. And this patchwork can create problems for people who are trying to get some consistency around this. The manufacturers tend to like it. Now, interestingly, it fascinates me that the US, which likes to talk about itself as the United States, maybe not like that, maybe more like that, it's kind of not united when it comes to things like legal and all the other things that go with it. It's kind of more like 50 squirrels in a trench coat. And before everyone, all the pedants in the room get twitchy, yes, I do know that this is not 50 squirrels in a trench coat, it's 50 squirrels in 50 trench coat, or possibly one squirrel replicated to 50 but it's the best I could do with limited artistic skills and an aversion to using AI to generate this stuff. Okay. So far from being the United States, the US is really, I think, 50 squirrels in a trench coat. All at once. So let's see where we are. Thank you. In an ideal world, cybersecurity, risk management with computers, would be a small part of a fairly well understood practice of risk management, but it's computers all the way down. We actually have disciplines around safety critical systems that do this really well that I think we probably need to look at adopting for some of the things that have computers inside them that we all think about, work with, build, break, flash, reflash, all of those kind of things. And there's many governments are unable or are unwilling to hold these companies to account, or maybe it benefits their agendas, so for whatever reason they remain inactive. It's easy to think of all this stuff as unintended consequences of the world in which we just happen to find ourselves, but technology is made of people. Start small. You can't necessarily move the world, but you can start in your local community. Thank you. Is it lunch now? I've got 5 minutes. Fantastic. Sorry, I'm going to burn all of my question and discussion time. So let's work on improving our own countries or our cities or our local neighbourhoods for our friends and our loved ones, even for our colleagues. Why not? And remember, the purpose of a system is what it does. I think that's burned into a drink. Yes. We'll all be, yeah. Okay, so this is the everything together part of the thing. There's this word of the year. Now, because again, this has to be a safe for all ages presentation, I'm replacing the bad word, with the poop emoji. I think you can guess what the word actually is, or you probably heard it. So it's hilarious to think that age appropriate means anything other than the filthiest, most disgusting kids playing Call of Duty Warzone or something and being on team chat. Anyway, I shall comply. Right, so impoopification. We're all living through the impoopocene, a great impoopening in which the services that matter to us that we rely on are turning into giant steaming, I added the steaming, piles of poop. Actual quote, pretty easy to figure out. Automated decision making. Serious people have been thinking about the design, implementation, controls, and above all, ethical implications of automated decision making for a long time. In 2017, a Twitter user posted this photo of an IBM training presentation from 1979. That one just shows him holding it. Here's it in detail. A computer can, never be held accountable, therefore a computer must never make a management decision. Gosh, that seems so cute and quaint and antiquated. Yet we're now living in the 21st century in a world where we're developing machine learning systems, there's not a word for that, deep learning systems and neural networks, oh my, that are effectively black boxes whose decision processes cannot be fully explained or verified, and in some instances their decisions may not be able to be predicted or controlled, and they're being used in actual real-world situations, including war zones and genocides right now, in ways that are not controllable and not understandable necessarily. This came from the same document. Interesting. So, AI bullsh poop. And then you sprinkle some of that sweet, sweet AI bull poop on top. What could go wrong? Okay, I just asked one of the curse questions. Sorry, this is my own personal little philosophy here. We never ask the curse questions. What could go wrong? How hard could it be? Thank you. But we should, and this comes from a good Starship's chief engineer who will tell you, we should ask the blessed questions. The blessed questions are, what could go wrong? How hard could it be? God, I love some Star Trek in here. Note the visor. I'm so proud of that. Okay. So, back to the AI bullpoop. Blessed questions, by the way, it's threat modelling. We do it in our lives. Most of us do it in our lives every day when we make decisions about whether or not to cross the street, all of those things. But we need to do it in our work as well. To be honest, this slide is mostly here because it amuses me immensely. Current hotness amongst all the technology kleptocrats is what's being called almost entirely inaccurately artificial intelligence, AI. Kathy Reed has just done a fantastic presentation bringing us all up to speed on this. If you didn't get a chance to attend, watch it when it gets up online. She covers all the sort of stuff about these things, these rapacious pirates of creative human-generated content, these rapacious copyright infringers, how they actually work. And speaking of hot dog fingers, was that not what we were talking about? The production company has actually made hot dog fingers that you can buy, and here's Jamie Lee Curtis wearing them on the red carpet. But the fantastic thing is with our AI, image-to-text generated present, it actually gives you fantastic plausible deniability should you, not a lawyer, not advising you to, should you decide to go and do crimes, because if you have extra fingers or hot dog hands, must be an artefact of the AI. Wasn't you, can't prove anything, weren't there. Okay. So what I'm really just trying to do here is work through all of the numerous systems that we, or people like us, have put in place in our current reality and ask us to all think hard about the choices we make, the values we hold and aspire to embody. Think about it. Are we the good guys? Are we the baddies? Good folks, better than good guys. Are we thinking more about, great, are we thinking more about that we could rather than we should? anyway, that's the nuts and bolts of it. Thank you very much for your attention. Apologies for running long and not having any time for question. I really did want this to be a conversation starter. Like I said, don't have any amazing solutions for you all except for hard work, constant effort, nudging the moral arc of the universe to bend, because it doesn't automatically do it. Not going to do that. And if you want to catch up with me, hallway track, somewhere around the conference, come say hi. Fairly tall, fairly visible, or ping me on Mastodon. That's where I mostly live on the social media these days. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.